Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy Thursday to you, by the way.
It's end of the week already. These weeks fly by. There's so much news. Every day it's fresh. Except for this story here, which instead of being fresh, it gets crazier and crazier. Bill, that's the lawfare that's going on against this administration.
What is it? 129 legal challenges, 64 injunctions, and that's the tip of the iceberg. Trump hasn't even been into, 2 months?
Out of all of the injunctions they've had over 227 years, 20 to 30 went to other presidents other than Trump. All the rest went to Trump. He hasn't been in office, He's been in office, 2 months?
Yes.
2 months. And these people, these judges, every single thing he does, they go after him for.
Well, this happened early on when the Constitution was being written, before we had a first president, Mr. Washington. You see, the old way of doing things, parliamentary, my dear Watson. It's all lawfare. We have judges for things like this.
Oh, yes.
We'll file injunction and lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And the founders came up with, it was Article 3, I think, Section 1, Article 3, which clearly states, for this very reason, the judicial power of the United States, Section 1 of Article 3 begins, shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. With that plain language undoubtedly in mind, this is why Governor DeSantis came out and said, wait a minute, whoa. You take a look at this. Congress has the authority to strip jurisdiction of the federal courts to decide these cases in the first place.
Well,
so in other words, they did this originally because they couldn't elect Washington to be president until they did that because of these bastards.
Here's the thing, though. These are federal district judges. Now you're saying, what are you saying, Joe? Why are you emphasizing? It means they have essentially an area of jurisdiction. That's why they call them district. They're federal district judges. They are supposed to take care of the federal law in a certain area. But in the case of President Trump, they have determined, all of these judges have determined that their district is the entire country. The entire country. So they are way out of bounds. I mean, I think I was reading this morning where Senator Josh Hawley has called on Congress to curtail the federal judge's authority to issue nationwide injunctions. These sweeping court orders have increasingly been used to halt federal policies across the entire country, often based on the ruling of a single solitary judge in one little town somewhere, out in the woods sometimes. Really, it's sad. We are, and here's what it kind of irritates me. I saw President Trump interviewed yesterday with Laura Ingraham, and she asked, well, what are you going to do? And President Trump said, well, what can we do? And she said, well, are you going to abide by the court orders? And he said, of course I'm going to abide by the court orders. The left would like you to say, no, I'm going to ignore them and just do what I think is best for the country, which, by the way, is what I think he should do. But he's playing it safe. He knows, for example, that he's now the president, and he has an entire Department of Justice that is supposed to be covering his backside. Now, and I hope they are. We've heard very little from Pam Bondi, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, in her defense, there's a lot going out there, and the one thing that you can't do is telegraph what you're about to do, because what they will do, Trump, he telegraphs what he's going to do, what his agenda is. Do you not find it odd, 129 and 64 in the first 2 months? Because everything that Trump campaigned on, he's doing.
Yeah, it's something we wanted. We wanted him to do this stuff, so they're turning their back, these judges, on us.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because he laid out his playbook, so they sat there and said, okay, this has been a Democrat thing. If this bastard gets in, we're just going to deny everything. Start writing those books. Write those opinions. And that's what they've done. And they go, here you go, Trumpy. 1, 2, 3. It's like a deck of cards.
Yeah.
They're just throwing out all the cards. They stack that deck.
Hawley said, Congress needs to roll back the nationwide injunction. These district court judges are way out of control. He's right. He's right. But, like everything in Congress, these people have got to stop talking and flapping their lips, and they've got to start doing stuff like today.
Maybe, I'll tie a story in and maybe relate it. You go back to the early 60s and, the John F. Kennedy files are out. And the one thing that everybody's talking about, well, not just the one thing, but one of the things that was out there, Laura Loomer brought it up, is that Kennedy felt that there might be a problem, and he actually went to, of all people, Russia, worried about rogue CIA agents. And then, of course, right after that, he was assassinated.
Mm-hmm. Anna Paulina Luna, the representative from Florida, was on the Benny Show. It's a podcast with Benny Johnson, and they were talking about this. Listen.
So this is something that I found particularly fascinating with these documents, that there is a predictive programming inside of multiple documents. Oswald will be killed in custody, that Oswald will do the killing, that we will get JFK one way or another, that there are various entities, whether it's the state of Israel or whether it's Cuba or whether it's Russia, that is interested in the killing of JFK. And that there seems to be, if anything, like a environment of allowance, perhaps, with the CIA for this to happen. And I'm wondering, one, if your takeaway is that, meaning there isn't a smoking gun. The document doesn't say, actually, CIA agent 1236571, he's the one who pulled the trigger. But what you're seeing here is a mosaic that's created of, here are all the enemies of JFK. We know that their intentions are to hurt JFK, and we're going to send them traveling at a very slow speed right through downtown, skyscrapers, in the back of an open-air limousine.
Well, also, if I could just point out, you actually have the document up right now that admits that also Dr. King is going to be killed as well. And so what I'm finding is it's a confirmation of, I think, many people's concerns, and that at the time, the intelligence agencies were operating in the shadows, and as you saw, was a rogue element and entity. When I made that first omission, Benny, saying that I believe that there were multiple shooters, I actually got calls from people. They're like, where are you finding this, this evidence? You haven't seen the documents yet. I said, I'm going based on witness testimony of, I'm not just talking like 1 or 2 or 3 witnesses here. We're talking upwards of 15 plus witnesses, not to mention that the Warren Commission, which was initially set up by Congress to investigate the assassination of JFK, knowingly omitted information that would have been considered evidence, right? So I'm not a criminal investigator. However, I can put 2 and 2 together. And what I can tell you is when you have a congressional committee omitting failing to admit evidence, and then in addition creating a narrative, which we know now with modern day technology and also witness testimony, that again the magic bullet theory was faulty. I mean, the fact is that we have basically everything that we could have ever imagined, wanted, and more. We are going to be able to answer those questions. But again, Benny, I mean, looking back at what happened, I did also find in one of the documents yesterday, as I was going through this with the American people, and you saw in real time all of these bombshells are coming out on X of all places, is that you actually also saw that allegedly JFK had asked at the time the leader of Russia for information on rogue CIA agents. And so isn't that interesting that he was inquiring on this, and then obviously he ends up assassinated. So look, we have a lot to go through. Again, there's thousands upon thousands of documents, but we are going after 20 key specific documents that we feel, in working with our team and then also working with experts who've been studying the JFK assassination for decades, can provide a better picture and context to the American people. I hope that the hearing that we have on the 2nd will at least help reset the historical narrative on John F. Kennedy with the facts, and then let the American people decide.
What I find interesting, correct me if I'm wrong, but the documents that they have were supposedly written pre-assassination, and they talked about the upcoming assassination of Kennedy and Martin Luther King in these documents. The documents were already stating that these people were going to be killed.
Yeah. What they've done, and I know that's the banter, is that our government did a hit on its own president. And but we've all kind of knew that the T's got crossed and the I's got dotted. And there's probably more documentation out there, even though this has been redacted. A lot of stuff has been lost. There's more, probably 70,000 more pages out there of stuff. There's going to be morsels of information. But if we determine that our government took a hit on its president, and you look at that then, and look at what happened with Trump, and then you go back to even the beginning, maybe we're not exactly the rose that we say we are of a country,
No, it's sad, and it pops a bubble because, as growing up in this country, you're taught that, it's God country, apple pie, and you're taught all these wonderful things, how we patriots gave up everything, risked everything to build this great nation. And I do love this nation. And by the way, I do believe that 99 and 4400% of the people who live in this country are good Americans. I mean, they're like me. They happen to drink the same Kool-Aid I drank. They feel this is a great country, and I think it has the potential to be that country. And at times, maybe it has even been that country. But there's an element, a rogue element in this country that has been around in some form, some shape or form for decades that struggles to control everything. Let me just say this, Bill. We have a president now who wants to straighten things out. But one of the things the deep state knows is that he'll be history in 3 years and 10 months. And they will be around. They'll still be there. Now, Trump has made it his mission to remove them from power. That's what he's trying to do right now. He's trying to extricate these non-elected bureaucrats who are controlling our country for their own personal gain and benefit and power. That's what he's trying to do. And Bill, you said it before. You said it yesterday, and I said it. I agreed. I concurred. We're in the middle of a non-violent, at this point, civil war.
Well, I would argue it is violent because you see all the things that were happening before Trump got in, the Antifa, protests and everything, flipping cars, burning buildings, burning everything. Sometimes they disguise it under racial hate. Hate is involved, but it is not us in racial hate. It is somebody out there that's stoking a fire here that they lit. And this is the problem. But what I'm seeing is what's going on now. This is not anything new in history. If you go back, you see flare-ups like this all throughout. You can take it back to the beginning.
Well, I grew up, in the 60s and 70s, and there were race riots and all that. People were being hit with batons, and there were buildings and cars being set afire. It's like they don't want us, and when I say they, I'm talking about the unseen, masked people in the darkness who are trying to control us. They don't want us to be comfortable. They don't want us to get relaxed in our peaceful ways, in our success as a country. They want you off balance at all times. They want you because if you're off balance, you can't think about what they're doing. If you're just always trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
But what is their agenda, for themselves that causes them to,
power and money.
Yeah.
Power and money.
Exactly.
What did I read yesterday? There was a budget, was it for the Department of Education, where they got
computers.
No, that's interesting. I'll say that we'll get to that in a second. But let's say the budget was $1 billion. The Department of Education used like $250 million of it, and
Right.
they don't know where the other 3/4 of it went.
Well, that's happening a lot. And everyone goes, why are you going after this? Well, you know what? This is how they fund themselves.
Yes.
You know, it's like an old house, and it's got cockroaches.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to rip the walls out to get all their little crumb trails and everything out, and the stench of them out, to sit there and rebuild and redo it. We've got to cut off their food supply, their money supply, because, like you said, in less than 4 years now, Trump is gone. As a matter of fact, in about 2 years, they're already talking about who they're going to run and how they're going to run, and everybody's going to campaign up. Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, well, wait, they really don't have to. They're at first and goal, and they're just sitting there going, hey, you know what? We're just running down this clock. That's all they're doing. Trump either scores or he doesn't. They're trying to play defense there, but they're holding a lot of cards, even though the majority of people, just because we overwhelmed the system and won the election, now you've got to defend that position and march. It's up to us to help us carry that ball forward.
And what's amazing to me is people are saying, well, you talk about these judges, maybe they have a point. Let me ask you a question. If you're somebody who is either a casual observer of what's going on, or if you're somebody on the left who happened to bump into this show by accident, why is it that these same judges who are enjoining President Trump at every opportunity didn't say a word when Biden, for no good reason, just stopped protecting our southern border? He just stopped protecting what he was historically charged with protecting, the border.
Right. Well, why are we sitting there, the tariff war, and, let's get everything on an even playing field. And it's never been for us. As a matter of fact, prices are going to be higher. Well, let me tell you something. Reach in your pocket how much money you got. You want more money? Well, you got to work. But if our jobs, because of tariffs, are going overseas because things are cheaper, pretty soon you're not going to be able to buy any of that. Oh, you're going to invest in stocks? Yeah, right. Okay, that's a carrot.
What you're not hearing? You're not hearing, for example, that the price of eggs have come down $2 in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
No one's talking about that. They talked about it going up under Trump in the very beginning, like he had something to do with it, even though he had just put the Bible down from being sworn in, right? But they're blaming him for the prices going up. Everything that happened in the first 2 months during this administration was a direct reflection on the Biden administration. It's we've talked about this before. Think of the administration as like a big ship, and you turn the power off. Even if you put it in reverse and try to stop it, there's momentum. It's still going to go forward. That's what an administration is like. No matter, even if you remove Biden from the helm of the ship, even if he put full speed reverse, it's still going to go forward. And that's what the momentum is, and Trump has to deal with that. Go ahead.
Well, there's something bigger going on. I'm sure that the left will attack it. Trump said something that was interesting that he did. What was it? He put into the Oval Office. What was it? The
Declaration of Independence. Yeah.
All right, that's a very important document.
But it's not the original.
It's not the original.
No, what happened?
It's a very important document that he put in there.
The very original is still in, I believe, is it the Library of Congress? It is still squirreled away. They show it, and then they think it goes down in an elevator into a vault in the basement. But there were I don't know, let's just say hypothetically 10 or 12 copies of the original that was done, I believe, by a printer from Philadelphia. And they're valued almost like the original because they're like one of the top 20. That's what he has in his office. He has one of those 1779 or whatever it is copies in his office. Still very valuable, still very important. Important
I think it's
that they were told, by the way, that they had to pull curtains on it. When he's not looking at it, he has to draw like a black curtain over it to keep the light from affecting the ink. Just a little point of interest. If you look at his Oval Office, when they're not looking at the Declaration, it has drapes over it.
Okay, so 20 copies, the original, What happens if, by some fluke of fate, those papers end up gone?
I don't think the odds of that happening are probably slim to none, because I don't believe all 20 are in one location. They're in different vaults, different places around the country.
That's not the question.
I would also imagine, by the way, that the Declaration in his office, even though it's framed,
digitized.
It's digitized, but it's also probably in some kind of fireproof glass frame.
Right.
It's probably protected.
Yeah, but it's like a deed to a house. You got to have your original documentation, or something. You lose your documentation. I'm just asking a dumb question.
No. You're asking if we lost the original copies of the Declaration of Independence, would the Declaration of Independence be of any value anymore, because it no longer exists?
Or could it be reinterpreted or rewritten?
No, I think there's so many other copies of it out there, like you said, digitized, and I think that that horse has left the barn.
Maybe not.
If the Library of Congress burned to the ground, if the White House burned to the ground, there's just too many people, too many scholars, and too many places around the country who know exactly what's on the Declaration of Independence, and I don't think it's the substance, not the ink.
Right. But if you have the originals gone, over time, you can murky up the waters of what was on the originals. I'm just saying, there's a reason for everything.
We live in a
probably
world,
a dumb question.
No,
but
we live in a world of fraud.
Yeah,
we live in a world where they can change anything and anywhere. I think we talked yesterday. There's a picture online of one of the justices. I'm not going to say who it is. You can probably guess, but it's a guy, and he's on an airplane, and it's the Lolita Express, and he has a young woman on his lap, and he's obviously having a good time. And I've told everybody that I don't like this justice, but I said you can't put any value in that, because there isn't a picture in the world nowadays that can't be manipulated or created. You know that from AI. You probably could say to an AI, "Give me this picture," and it would give you the picture.
Oh, I have AI, and as a matter of fact, I've got a computer that I'm gearing towards having my own personal AI and not having to go online for stuff, for subscriptions I got, because never mind. But it is a good tool to have. But
if you think of it as a tool. You're right.
If you think of it as a tool, but here's your problem. It was proven during the last election, all the knowledge that computer has is based on knowledge in other computers and in itself. If somebody goes through and does a deep scrub or manipulates the knowledge, well, it changes, doesn't it? And its answers change. And there's the problem. So
I heard somebody say, Bill, that here's what caused the situation that we're in right now. I heard, and it was a knowledgeable guy, said, look, the deep state, from what I understand, had planned on winning this past election. I don't know how they planned on doing it, but they were fairly confident that they could take the election. Obviously a miscalculation on their part. But they figured that with AI, from this point on, they were going to change the way the system worked. Believe it or not, they like this was going to be the last time in history that we had to deal with 4-year elections. I don't know how they were going to do this, but the plan was that the deep state was going to fundamentally change the way our system worked. We no longer could be relied on to make the right decision every 4 years. They had planned on stopping the operation of our system as we know it right now. And when Trump came along and threw a monkey wrench into their plans, well, now they're desperate. Now they are trying desperately to regain control of the reins, and they will do anything. And, we talked about if they would plan so obviously, based upon the information that came out, to assassinate John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, if they would plan that back in 1962 and 63, and that was when they didn't have the sophisticated computers and things like that, not that we knew of. They probably had something that we didn't know about, but they didn't have the sophisticated computers we have today. Can you imagine what they're planning for us? Can you imagine how they're planning to manipulate us and to change our history? How they plan to? President Trump is in a dangerous situation right now. I hope to God that his Secret Service are up to par. I have my doubts. Seriously, because, when you allow a mic boom to hit the face of a president of the United States for the first time in history, and there are no consequences, that says something about the Secret Service and their protection, doesn't it?
Yeah, and she's in hiding now, and she's deleted access to her social accounts, and she's actually a Trump hater. Speaking of haters, and you're talking about all this stuff, anti-Trump FBI agent. He was arrested for disclosing classified information. As a matter of fact, he was kind of worried, so he decided he was going to flee the country, get on a plane, and get the out of here.
Yep.
And they got him at the airport.
Yeah, and this is an interesting story, Bill. This guy was anti-Trump before it was in vogue to be anti-Trump. And this is what Trump is dealing with in the FBI and the CIA and all of these other departments. I don't know how his secretaries are going to be able to handle this. I mean, I think of Kash Patel. We haven't heard a word from Kash Patel since he got into office. I thought he was going to be right out there, but I think he's got his hands full. I think he's surrounded by a massive headquarters building filled with people who hate him and want to see his demise.
They are, they're under attack. Everybody's under attack. Now, I have seen things from Kash Patel. He's doing stuff and he's out there. But here's the problem. We report, well, the ratings are down on CNN and MSNBC and all of that stuff. All right, the ratings are down, but here you've got the internet. And they live and thrive on controlling the narrative of what you see. And you're not seeing narrative on anything that he's doing, any progress or attempted progress at anything. And then they go, well, obviously, they're not, what you see are attacks on all the administration not doing their job. Well, everything's unraveling. They're not getting along. And that's the furthest from the truth.
Well, they want you to feel that way. They want you to feel that there's a schism between Elon Musk and President Trump. And Musk will say, no, there's nothing. We're stronger than ever. We're on the same page. Musk isn't trying to get a job in government. He doesn't need it. And they're saying, I hear these damn fools on these different variety shows and talk shows say, what is he really looking for? Like on The View, what's in it for him? This is the richest man in the friggin' world, folks. This guy has got more money than most countries. Do you think he needs another buck? No, he's giving his money away. He's literally, I don't think he made a lot of money going up and rescuing those astronauts the other day. He might have lost money doing that. But he did it because it was the right thing to do. He talks about helping humanity, helping his neighbor. People may say, well, how can he help his neighbor if he's firing all these government employees? If these government employees, and maybe there are thousands of them, if these jobs are killing our country,
right.
If all of these unnecessary employees are ultimately killing our country because it's draining our treasury and we have no funds to replenish our treasury to keep us alive, then it's like cutting out a cancer. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that lightly or loosely. Listen, we've all been on the wrong end of a downsizing or a format change or whatever in private business. It happens, especially in what we did in the past. If someone decides up above that they're changing the format to Hungarian polkas, we have no say in that, and it may mean that everybody is summarily dismissed one day. They're sometimes met at the door by a security guard and a basket of your junk from your desk, and off you go. I hope you enjoy the rest of your life. That happens, but for some reason, most of the government employees in Washington think that when they were employed, when they got their jobs, it was for life. It was a guaranteed income for life, and that's where. And they were led to believe
nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever. But I would submit to those people, if they're aggressive, they'll find something. They'll realize in some cases that the world is better on the other side of government employment. That they get better jobs. So, but it's not that Musk wants to just summarily fire people. He said, if we don't make these changes, our government, as we know it, is going to die. He said something almost exactly like that. And it's like, wow. It's like when the smartest guy in the world and the guy who knows as much as he does about money says that if we don't fix this now, because this is our only opportunity, then we're screwed. You got to follow what he says. Obama, Clinton, Bush, it goes on. They all talked about it. They all talked about it. They didn't do a damn thing.
Obama was talking about the wasting government and everything, but you know what? That was just a show.
Yep.
That's all it was. Biblically, you sit there and look at things. The one thing that should stand out in this, everything's about money. The root of all evil is money. If you strip down everything, took away every country, everything, there's enough resources on this planet that everybody can live a very nice, sustainable life. But unfortunately, we've hitched our cart to, money and greed. That's the cart that we're hitched to.
There was a report on the news yesterday, an interview with the president of the Congo in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Congo. And you may say, well, what's so important about that? I didn't realize this. It may be one of the wealthiest countries in the world as far as untapped resources is concerned. And China's trying to muscle their way into it. And finally, and they turn to us because even with all of the bad things that have happened in our country, we're still better than the best of some of these other countries, but if we were a fair world, would help these people with their own resources get off the ground. We wouldn't strip them barren and leave them desolate and broke, which is what we did historically. And not we, but, the Western world has done that historically for decades. We've gone into these countries, we've raped them of their natural resources, and we've taken off and left them broken. If we're fair, we're gonna from now on we're gonna go in and we'll take a profit, but we'll also help you get on your feet.
Yeah. Well, it's a crazy world. Look, this planet has the capability of being a utopia for all life.
Yeah.
There's only one problem. It has a disease.
Greed.
It's called mankind.
Yeah. I would say greed.
Greed.
Yeah,
greed. But where does greed come from?
It comes from man. Yeah, that's true.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We are our own disease. So really, as we fight evil, we're fighting ourselves. It's.
Hey, I should point out that if you are right now, you may be a little tired, a little nervous from what we've been talking about because there's a lot of things going on. What you should do right now is you should sit down, just take it easy, sit down, maybe have yourself a nice hot cup of Jim and Bill's Right Side coffee. Oh, wait, you don't have any Jim and Bill's Right Side coffee?
Why don't you have some?
Well, listen, we can fix that problem. All you have to do is go to itsanotherday.com. It's another day, all one word, .com. That's our main website. You click on it. It's very easy to do. I mean, if you can spell, you can do it. Itsanotherday.com. bingo. You're right there at our website. Bill, what do you find when you go to the website?
Well, when you go to the website, up the top, you do see it where it says Right Side Shop. But at the bottom, you see the little streamer of all the things, the Right Side coffee, different variations of it. You have coffee mugs and T-shirts and hats and just cool stuff. As I like to say, swag, baby. We got it.
Yeah, and we also have Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. It's a delicious medium blend roast. It's also a medium decaf blend roast. We have you covered on both sides because, we know some people have like high blood pressure problems. They can't drink a lot of coffee. They can drink decaf, but they can't drink the unleaded. That's okay. We have you covered. We have the decaffeinated version of Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. We also have, is it Make America Percolate Again? Is it Mopa?
Yes,
coffee?
we do. Yeah. It's good coffee, and the bag is collectible, and the fact that it's got a very cool, branding on it, packaging. So
hey,
it's worth a look,
And also, by buying stuff in our gift shop, you're helping us out as a program because we are trying to grow the show. You have to promote it to grow it, and we've gone pretty far with absolutely no promotion. It's been all word of mouth. Our statistics say we do about 4 million downloads a week worldwide, which is a lot for us. That's a lot of people, 4 million. And they said that since we started doing the show, which was, 3 years and 3 months ago or something like that, we've done over 400 million downloads worldwide, which is a lot of downloads, which is just kind of eye-crossing when you think about it. But, we'd like to grow it and be bigger than that. And it takes kind of revenue. We don't have a Patreon button for you to hit to send us money.
Nope.
We figured, look at if you want to help us out, you should get something in return. Our stuff isn't that expensive, friends. When you go to the gift shop, it's not going to break the bank, and you buy something, and when you buy it, remember you're not just getting the item, but you're also helping to further the cause, to help us promote the program. So we appreciate it. We thank you. Also, it helps to keep Juan, Jose, and the Border Crossers employed.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
They sing that so well. I'm always impressed with how well they do that. It sounds like every time they do it sounds like the last time they did it. They just got it down to a science. I don't know how they do it. What?
That's a great statement. Every time they do it, sounds like the last time they did it. Just like our show.
Yes.
When you listen to our show,
yes,
it sounds like the last time we did it.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused at what you just said, but I kind of, I'll shake my head anyway. What the heck?
Yeah, you know what? Well, I wake up confused. And but the good thing is I stay the same all day, and I go to bed confused.
You're consistent.
Yeah, I'm very consistent, and my sleep is confused. I'm confused right now, and so is the listener.
Yes. But, we're happy, and that's all that counts.
Our government is confused.
We're happily confused. Anyway.
And we're not happy about the confusion in the government.
Oh, my God. Hey, Scott Jennings was on. He's the lone voice of a conservative on CNN. By the way, I don't agree with everything he says. For example, at one point, I think I don't think he hit it in this clip we're playing, but he talks about how he's not crazy about the pardons that Trump gave out to the people who were involved with January 6th. I think that's a bit of I think it's a bit of a cop out. I mean, to be honest with you, go ahead.
People that go, well, they should have never pardoned that. It was an insurrection. That's because you bought the left narrative, the Kool-Aid. You drank the Kool-Aid that the left laid out. If you go back and look, that it was all a sham. Look at little Lizzie there, and what was her name?
Liz Cheney and
Liz Cheney, and the crew, and Adam Schiff, who sat there and wrote fictitious, letters and whatnot. If you look at all of that, and it was a sham from the meetings before, then you know what? You got to sit there and go, this was not an insurrection. Plus, it wasn't. All the stuff that happened to people was caused by the left.
Cassidy Hutchinson, or whatever her name, the young lady who said that when Trump got into the Beast, the limo, he tried to jump over the seat to get the Secret Service agent to turn the car around to go back. I mean, which anybody who knows anything about that car, and if they know President Trump, They know he would never do something as juvenile as that. But she tried to sell that story about how he tried to get, and even the Secret Service agents who were there said, that didn't happen. That never happened.
I believe there's protective glass between the driver and the back. And if you've ever sat in a limo like the Beast or anything like that, when you're sitting down on the back seat, I'm going back away from the microphone, but you think about a 6'4" guy. I'm a little over 6'2", and he says he's 250. Okay, we'll give him the 250. I'm 215, but I'm sitting there going, in my prime, it's not that easy to jump and try to fly forward, even if there wasn't a glass there. Plus, the driver doesn't substantiate it. Nobody substantiates it. It didn't happen. It's a made-up thing. A lot of this crap is made up.
But Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, they tried to sell it as the truth. These are liars, folks. That whole committee was a sham because 90% of what happened on January 6th was not truthful. There might have been some troublemakers there. It was what, 1 million people, maybe a little more in the crowd. A lot of people. There probably were some troublemakers, but most of the people who were there were just citizens wanting to voice their concern about what had happened during the past election.
Well, people watch the news and they have this, oh my God, no! They have that kind of reaction. So they can throw these whoppers out there and you're guilty by,
implication, implying
it. You're guilty by implication. We imply that he did this. Oh, well, we got to get rid of that, Wait a minute. Yeah. It hasn't been vetted. You have nothing. Yeah, but it was implied. You need to step down. That's just nasty. Well, you know what? And see, that's the one thing. I used to always sit there and say, if I ever got in politics, I would have one person that would sit there and I'd say, you go find the dirt on everybody that's interviewing. So I have a card right there. When they start doing that, say, well, you know what? You want to lay dirt out there? Let's see here. You're from CNN?
Yeah.
What's going on with you and that hooker you were with, when your wife was home and you said you were busy and you couldn't be there for the anniversary? How are you celebrating? Whatever it is. I would lay the dirt out and throw it back at him.
Well, Scott Jennings was talking about what's happening with the fire bombings of the Tesla locations, which, by the way, is terrorism. It is terrorism. It is. And yet, Jimmy Kimmel and other people like that are making light of it. They're making it, in some ways, they're actually encouraging it. It's okay to be doing that because Elon Musk now is a friend of Trump. Excuse me. But anyway, here's what Scott Jennings had to say about the fire bombings and what's happening to Elon Musk.
The other night, Donald Trump said these are domestic terrorists. Everybody laughed about it and scoffed at it. That video looks like terrorism to me. I mean, it's obviously an organized, coordinated effort, however people are communicating with each other, to do this to people around the country who chose to buy a Tesla at some point in the past, many of whom I'm sure were Democrats who bought them in the first place, all because their entire political worldview is ruled by their emotions. And that's the American left right now. It is one angry mob after another willing to take things into their own hands, up to and including keying, firebombing, and otherwise vandalizing cars and car dealerships and charging stations. It's outrageous. It is terrorism. People ought to be put in jail and left there for a very long time and be taught a lesson.
So when they do it to a Tesla dealership, it's really bad. But when they do it to the halls of Congress, we should pardon them. Is that your position?
No, I've never. I don't
are
support,
you okay with
I know you haven't been around for a while, so let me educate you about my position about January the 6th.
I'm so sorry.
Let me educate you.
You don't need to pay for
you don't need to. You don't need to be condescending to me. So let me educate you about my position. You want to attack me? Let me finish. Let me finish.
Let's do this January 6th and then
I'm sorry you're getting emotional.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're a condescending person who hasn't been paying attention to what I do.
Okay, stop, guys.
So here's the issue. I didn't support what happened on January the 6th and was one of the first Republicans to call it out. I don't support the pardons. I have repeatedly, just like my friend Ashley here, said that no violence in our political system is acceptable. But this right here, what's going on with a guy who helps our country, who runs successful companies, who doesn't have to be doing this, and now one of his companies is under systematic terroristic threat and violence all over the country, and people seem to be laughing about it or fine with it. It's outrageous.
Let's talk about the pardon. Well, let me just talk about the pardons for a second, okay? I think he's wrong on that decision.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those young people, and they were unjustly incarcerated for no good reason other than it was a political statement on the left. They were going to politically make the right suffer. Those people were made they were made an issue out of them, and I think that Scott Jennings is wrong there. President Trump did the right thing. Absolutely did the right thing.
Number one, I'm going to attack the journalist, because I see this a lot now. No, they won't let you answer the question. They throw their narrative out there, and then when you try to answer, well, you don't think so? The halls of Congress? You think that's not an attack? Well, let me tell you something. I don't think it was an attack on the halls of Congress by the January 6ers. You see, the meeting that happened before January 6th by Pelosi, Schumer, Schiff, and them narrating that and the evidence that's come out means, yeah, there was an attack, but it was from the left to set up the right. If we're going to do the story, let's get the facts right.
They don't talk about the fact. They make it sound like it was the first time it happened. There were shooting. There were shootings in the House of Congress back in I think it was in the 50s or the 60s. People were shot. Representatives were shot on the floor of the House of Representatives. That happened. Read your history. But they make it sound like this is the first. You look at the people who were walking around on January 6th, and they were walking like they were on a tour. All right? They were polite. They stayed within the certain guidelines and the ropes. They didn't, for the most part, they didn't break anything. The people who broke stuff, by the way, I think were the plants, the people who were put there to cause trouble.
Exactly. And, you're sitting there going, they're trying to lay it on the president. I heard his speeches. I know where he was. I know exactly what was going on. And he never once said for anybody to do anything bad.
Right.
Now, you might want to sit there and say, well, they did. No. It was staged and set up. If there were bad players, it was a handful. And, when you're in a crowd where you're getting shoved and hit, you hit back. This is not the first time. If anything, the only attack that's really going on is an attack on the fabric of America.
Here's what Trump said.
I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Now, I'm going to tell you about that. That was done in the afternoon. And that was done, he did it quickly to get the people to stop. Do you know the networks held it back?
Exactly.
He had to place it on the internet. And no one saw it on the internet. They literally kept the people from seeing that statement for the longest time.
Yeah, and they pretend like that statement never, ever happened.
And by the way, Bill, when he was with the crowd, addressing the crowd before the rally, he told them, and now you're going to go to the Capitol to go peacefully and patriotically. Those are the two words he said, and they don't play that.
And, it was the left that came out, what? You're an election denier. You don't believe that Joe Biden won that election by a landslide?
Hell no.
No, I don't. I was at his rallies where there were 6 people. I sat there and watched the numbers flip dramatically by nearly 1 million votes at 2 in the morning, actually 1:40 something in the morning when everybody went to bed and they said, oh, things are closed. I saw with my own eyes things happen. So I'm going like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Yeah. And, so are we going to have to wait 64 years like we waited for the Kennedy files to come out?
That's a good question. That is a darn good question. That's a heck of a good. No one's asked that question. Do we have to wait 64 years to get the truth, or 61 years to get the truth, like we did with the Kennedy assassination?
I want forensics of the real numbers and everything. Well, we destroyed them. Hey, well, that tells you something right there. But 64 years, do we have to wait for that?
We know that Nancy Pelosi was offered troops by President Trump. By the way, they said she wasn't for the longest time, and then we got it on tape. She was recorded by her own daughter in the parking garage at the Capitol, and she was saying how, I should have taken those troops that it was offered to me. Oh, boy. I mean, this is before she started to get a spin in play, But I think, in all honesty, the difference between now and when the Kennedy assassination took hold is that the people are much more anxious for the truth now. I want to know I don't want to know about the ramifications of the Epstein file and I want to see the damn stuff on the Epstein case right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I don't want my grandchildren's children to know what happened now. I want the diagnosis right now so we can cure this cancer.
Let me ask you a question. If you did something wrong, if you were a criminal and you did something wrong and you were found guilty of doing something wrong, that would be public record, unless the files were sealed by a judge, which I don't know whether that's ever right. Okay, in a country like we live in, if you're supposed to be open and free and honest, if you're going to open the files for some people, you got to open them for everybody, right? That's how it should be. But no, it may affect another case. It may do this. It may do that. It may rain on Sunday. I mean, I think if you're going to be honest about stuff, you got to be honest. I think that if they would go after Bill Knight and look at his criminal record, to see and publish that in the media, why are they being so slow about going after what Epstein did? Hell, Epstein's dead. And Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. So who's it going to affect? It's going to affect the criminals who are on that plane. It's going to affect the pedophiles who were going down and having their dalliances with children on that island.
When you deal in a world of secrets and dark cover and things like that, and you're playing with nefarious people, you have to have something on them. You got to have a trump card, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's where the Epsteins of the world come in. So, there's talk that maybe he was the CIA operative. Well, now we know that the CIA most likely is the agency that did the government hit to take out a president of the United States. So who do they have? Because you want somebody that you can control. You want to sit there and say, you will do this for me. No, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. Well, we have something on you. Here you go. There it is right there. Would you like this to become public? You're going to lose your wife. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your car, your house, all your money. And you are going to go to this prison, and be, Billy Bob Bubba,
by the way, those people who were put in those prisons in Washington, those cells they put them in were, in some cases, covered with mold. They were put in cells that had very poor heating. They got maybe a blanket and maybe a mattress on the floor. They lived in a crappy environment. They didn't just put them in jail to make a point. They put them in jail and made them feel the pain. That's what they did. It was one of the meanest things I've seen as a member of our society It was one of the meanest things. It was the kind of thing that you would read about back in the 60s and 70s when they talked about the punishment in the Soviet prisons. And I'm not kidding about that. What they did to the January 6ers they imprisoned was a scar and a sin on the soul of our society, and Trump did the best thing in the world by giving them a pardon. At the very least, he gave them a pardon. They should get reparations of some kind.
If you've ever had to help somebody that was in some kind of, in prison, I mean, really help them, how they're treated in federal prisons and state prisons, and the people that do those kind of jobs, granted, most of the people, not all of them, but most of the people are in there because they did something pretty bad. But, then they're given a meal that has watered down slop and, moldy bread and whatever, and it's kind of crazy what you see there. So Trump did do him a favor.
I was watching a show last night about a prison that closed back, I guess it closed in 2009 in Tennessee, Brushy Mountain Prison. And it was built maybe in the mid-1800s. Mm-hmm. And they had an idea. They built, I guess it was built in 1898, because they were still suffering from the Civil War in Tennessee, even in the late 1800s, And so they had an idea, build the prison next to a coal mine, and then take the prisoners and make them free workers, make them work in the coal mines for 12 hours a day. Some of them, by the way, would die in those coal mines. There was a cave-in, killed about 20 of them in one fell swoop. And they were so disposable back then that the prison decided it's not worth our while to go dig for them. It's too dangerous. We'll just build another channel around the cave-in and just ignore it. So those people, even if they were alive and trapped, they were stuck there because they were just prisoners. We have in many cases, some of our justice has been as bad, if not worse, than some of our crimes. We're better than that, and we always should have been better than that, and we should have been better than that back then, but we weren't.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show, and I'd probably get emails and whatnot. I have feelings on how it should work. If somebody's done a heinous crime, they need to do the time. But then again, I'm sitting there going, keeping them, I hate to say it this way, but somebody that's done a crime to where they cannot be released into society again, are we doing them a favor by letting them, continue to their death in lockdown, solitude, and bad conditions? Or,
well,
I'm just saying,
we could do another show on that. Maybe we'll do it on a weekend show. But listen, we are. Here's the thing: we are told that we are civilized. We're a civilized society. We are better than the people we incarcerate. We're told that. I mean, we're told that because of who we are and because of what we believe, we're not. We don't stoop to their level. So is putting them in jail for the rest of their life a good thing? Look at capital punishment. I have historically vacillated back and forth. Okay, I have at times been pro capital punishment, and then there's the Christian in me who says, "Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just not our place to do that." Are we being any better than them by doing that?
There are so many arguments every way. You look at the old movie Escape from New York, where they turned it in when it was bankrupt, and they made a movie that became a penal colony, and the president's plane crash there with all those scum and everything. Then there was, the reality that Australia, they were a penal colony.
Oh, yeah. They shipped, it was colonized by criminals from England.
Yeah. So they got there and they sat there and said, we can just be criminals, or we can sit there and turn this into something. And they did.
Yeah. Well, we could go on and on about this.
Yeah,
I think that we've got a situation now where we should have been better to those January 6ers because they were our neighbors and they were parents. And the thing that gets me, Bill, is that 99% of them were first-time offenders. You know, they were first-time offenders, and they threw them. They didn't separate the first-time offenders from people who were repeat offenders.
Because the worst thing that they did is they had a different political belief than the people that locked them up. And that is a hate that has become so deep, dark, and evil now. You could cheat on your spouse and be held in higher esteem than, wait, you are a Republican?
Oh, I know.
Oh,
I know. Hey, listen, I got an interesting story. I definitely wanted to do this sooner, but time gets away from you when you do a show like this. Elon Musk was talking on an interview about an interesting little gadget that he found. It's called the money machine.
Oh, yes, the computers.
The magic money machine. Listen.
One of the things you told me about is what you call
insane.
Magic money computers at the treasuries. So tell us about it, because I never heard of that until you brought that up.
Okay, so you may think that the government computers all talk to each other, they synchronize, they add up what funds are going somewhere, and it's it's coherent. That the numbers, for example, that you're presented as a senator, are actually the real numbers.
One would think.
They're not.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not totally wrong, but they're probably off by 5% or 10% in some cases. So I call a magic money computer any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
So how does that work?
It just issues payments.
And you said there's something like 11 of these computers at Treasury that are sending out trillions in payments?
They're mostly at Treasury. But there's some at HHS, there's one or two at State, there's some at DOD. I think we found now 14 magic money computers.
14, okay.
They just send money out of nothing.
Okay, I've already put an order in for one of those computers. I don't know about you, but I mean,
well, those computers used to be called. You remember the woman that sat there and got the phone call from the bank, Mrs. So-and-so, you're out of money. How can I be out of money? I still have checks in my checkbook.
Right, I know. Magic money computer. I want one.
Jeez.
I want one desperately. Please. Put my name on the list.
Crank.
By the way, Tim Walsh, he was out there making.
Oh, little Timmy, he was such a nice guy.
He's making fun of us. I played this clip yesterday, but it's worth playing it again. He wants the world to know that he thinks he can kick our derriere. Listen.
Have they figured it out that the identity piece of this is more important than the actual substance behind it?
Well, they've been doing it for decades. I mean, we've saw the welfare queens. They've seen the Southern strategy. We've seen it over and over. It's an old playbook, and we're as dumb as we want to be that we allow them to do this with CRT and ESG and DEI and every three-letter word.
And then they demonize people.
Yeah, demonize, and they weaponize grievance. They other people. They talk down to people, past people. They humiliate people. They weaponize difficult issues. But the bottom line is, and I think it goes back to what we began with, is, and I applaud you for this, is we cannot continue to be on the defense reacting to this. We've got to go on the offense. We got to meet people where they are. But I also think this, and this is where, this is part of the conversation I'm trying to have, is you got to respect people you disagree with, and you can't just dismiss people.
How do you fight it?
And this
I think I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they want to do it. I know I can run them.
You hear that, folks? That's Tim Walz, a former vice presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, saying that he thinks he can kick MAGA's ass. I think he's sorely mistaken. I really do. I think he would have a problem. This is a guy with what was his nickname? Tampon Tim?
Tampon Tim. Well, he's the one that wanted the tampon machines in the boys' rooms and the girls' rooms, and I'm sitting there going,
"What's with that?" Yeah, I mean,
what's the deal about that? Well, this transgender thing. We're making it a thing, and they're pushing boundaries and rights to where. To what end? Okay, you're transgender. You want to have the right to go into the ladies' room or the men's room. Really? Seriously? You know, I mean, this is...
We could talk all day about this, too. It's an issue that didn't exist 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Well, you know, okay, you know.
And by the way, this goes to, I believe this goes to the deep state wanting to divide us as a people, keep us arguing with each other, you know?
Yeah, well, I have a solution for it, but nobody would like it. George Soros, you know, I guess one of his offices in India got taken down by India because of things that he's into. Yeah, they got raided. Yeah, that's good. Oh, well, Georgie Poo, how's it feel?
Well, he doesn't. He probably doesn't feel it at all. Actually, he's so wealthy.
Yeah.
He probably figures I'll buy something else or someone else.
You know, I don't have it in front of me. There was a story I read yesterday. A guy from Minnesota, Republican, it happened to a Democrat too. You know, if they don't like you, all of a sudden you're brought up in charges. Now, supposedly this guy elicited sex with a minor. All right. Now, and the Republicans and Democrats are saying, you got to resign. This is not a good look. Guilty by implication. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there going, but there's been no evidence presented and whatnot. And I'm sitting there going, you know, that smells of entrapment. In other words, they invent, and I've seen this before in lawfare, where they sit there and they set something up, and it's a ruse.
Don't they? A lot of people will feel that this guy resigned because he did it. You know?
There's no way that you can answer that, because if you
it's like that saying, "Are you still beating your wife?"
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't answer it, you're guilty. You answer it, you're guilty.
Yeah.
You say, I never did it, I'm going to defend myself.
Yeah.
Well, what are you defending if you didn't do it? Then if you don't defend yourself, you're accepting that?
Yeah.
You know, it is a no-answer question that's thrown at you, but it's called entrapment, where they use information. It's kind of like chicanery. We have a crooked judicial system now. I'm not saying the guy is or isn't guilty. Don't know. But I would sit there and say, all right, you know, you better bring forth some information and evidence right now. And this, but apparently, supposedly he was talking to a cop when, well, it doesn't matter. It's entrapment. And it's their word against his word. But he's in a damned if you do. The taint's there. He may as well resign, because it'll never go away.
We're approaching the end of our show. I want to ask you, I know I have my feelings, but what do you think? Where do you think President Trump is going to go with all these lawfare suits? A lot of people are saying, and I kind of lean this way actually, is that if there are a true separation of powers, and I believe in the separation of powers, I believe that he should simply say to the judiciary, meaning these district justices, stay in your own lane. Get out of my lane. You're not in the executive branch. This is an executive branch decision, and ignore them. But every time I turn the TV on, every legal analyst seems to say, oh, well, you have to follow the law, and you have to go through the steps of the judiciary, and maybe go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, isn't that the executive branch deferring to the judiciary for an answer to the problem that should only be resolved in the executive branch?
They're passing the buck down. And I sit there and I'm going, Trump has got to keep the attack going. It's almost like watching a movie where, the
wagons are surrounded by the Indians.
Well, I was going to say, you've got a dam. And that dam is holding back all this water that, let's just say, all this bad stuff that the Democrats have, and they're the dam of defense. And you got to find a way to put a crack in that dam and blow that dam so that you can go forward and fix the,
Right. Okay, yeah.
and
that's
he's
just
got
it.
his people in play, but they've got to their mission has got to succeed. There's a wall of defense there that has to be broken through. And until that happens, he's got to do exactly what he's doing.
I don't feel comfortable when I hear President Trump say, well, I'll follow the law and the court orders. And
he has to.
Yeah, but I'm thinking to myself, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Tell Pam Bondi to get out there, make a few fire and brimstone statements. By the way, these judges, in my opinion, have proven themselves to be traitors. Now, I hear other people say, well, they're just doing their job as the judiciary questioning. No, they are purposefully interfering with the operation of our federal government. It would be as if they blew the bridge. You send your army to go a certain place, and these people have blown the bridge, so your army has to stop. You can't go on and continue the fight. And that's what these justices are doing. They're trying to, figuratively speaking, blow the bridge so President Trump can't continue with all the things he promised to do for us.
Yeah. I think Pam has got her hands full, and she's got a lot of targets. And if she comes forward and surfaces and says something damning or whatever, now they got their sights on her. And the left news is just going to be all over it because it's going to take a little bit. You just can't say, I'm going after this, and it happens overnight. The process.
But it seems like the left always did that. There seems like the left, boy, it was like instant gratification. They were gonna impeach President Trump, and damned if they, and they impeached him.
But they didn't do it, did they?
No, well, they impeached him. The process,
they impeached him, but they didn't take him out.
Well, by the way, there are some people who are just satisfied with the process of impeachment because that's like a forever stain. It's a scar they leave on the administration of Trump. Well, he was impeached twice. But that doesn't mean anything, folks.
No, it doesn't mean anything. And when you control the narrative, you sit there. If you got the stain on Trump, you can keep running that stain over and over and over again. But if the stain's on you, but I control the narrative, it just fades away like a line from a movie, like you're breaking wind in the wind. If I were Elon Musk, I would literally buy the 3 networks, because he could afford it, buy all 3 networks, and then etch-a-sketch the entire news department of all 3. See, they would say it's state news. They're trying to say that now with the X,
Yeah, but I'd then go out and hire some real journalists, real people who historically have, the Laura Logans of the world, the people who have prided themselves in being neutral. And by the way, just for being neutral and having a difference of opinion, the left has tried to make them sound like that they were right-wing conspiracy theorists.
Well, yeah, if you don't agree with the left, you are a right-wing conspirators because they don't believe in the scales of justice are balanced. The scales of politics, they kind of go back and forth, but they're balanced, all right? Sometimes leans a little left, sometimes leans a little right, but we have a balanced system. No. They've got their foot on the scale to try to keep it all one way.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting program.
Yeah.
You see where Executive Director Eric Nickel made the announcement this week. Nickel blamed on, I'm trying to read about Canada. This is interesting. We talked about Tesla and all the problems they're having with their dealerships being attacked. But it doesn't stop there. In Canada, up in, I think it's Vancouver, they have a car show, the Vancouver International Auto Show. And Tesla was supposed to be a participant. It was supposed to be there showing its new cars and futuristic goals and stuff like that. Well, Eric Nickel said the Vancouver International Auto Show has removed Tesla as a participant in this week's event after the automaker was provided multiple opportunities to voluntarily withdraw. The political position on this has absolutely no bearing on the decision. This is purely from this is purely from a safety point of view for our guests and for our attendees. That's a lot of garbage, folks. Okay.
Well, they might be tempted to firebomb his cars, and then it would destroy their building and all the other cars there, because they're projecting their hate, and that's all it is.
As our friends from south of the border would say, they have no cojones. Senor.
Cojones.
No cojones.
Yeah, you want cojones.
No. Anyway, that's about it for us today. Interesting program. It's another busy day. Don't be surprised if some other district justice doesn't come out and say something crazy too. It seems like it's the district of the day, district justice of the day. Who will it be? Will it be your district justice who comes out and makes some kind of complaint against Trump? Find out today on our game show, Injunction for a Day. Anyway, I'm done, sir. You can take us out of here if you want to.
All right. Well, let me take the controls of this plane. I'm not going to fly her down. She's going to soar off into the skyline, and out the cockpit window I go. Hasta la vista, baby! We're out of here!
This is CRN America.